Welcome to the PSC. I know you would have had a hectic week, so we're happy that you can make an appearance with your team. But I'll ask you to introduce your company and team with you to the members of the committee before we proceed.
Thank you, Chair. And I want to say that we appreciate the accommodation that was made to the ministry to allow us to defer our appearance before you. I am accompanied by, good morning to everyone. I am accompanied by Ambassador Charlene Phoenix, who is the Chief Administrative Officer, by Mr. Kemraj Singh, the head of the Expenditure Planning and Monitoring Unit.
Said Ambassador?
Pardon?
Oh, I didn't hear your initial remarks.
Sorry, I was greeting the committee. Good morning, and I was expressing our gratitude for the accommodation that was made to defer our appearance before the committee.
You're welcome.
I'm accompanied by Ambassador Charlene Phoenix, head of Chief Administrative Officer, the head of our Expenditure Planning and Monitoring Unit, Mr. Kemraj Singh, the Principal Personnel Officer, Ms. Anis Ward, and Ms. Denise McGarrell, Accountant in the Finance Department.
That's okay. Okay, thank you. I can't recall we had an ambassador making an appearance before. Welcome, Ambassador. Members, we have 15 paragraphs for consideration, and I put all of the paragraphs before the committee to ask the visiting team any questions that requires a response. The floor is open, honorable members.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, sir.
Once it passed, 306. 252, 2017, 309, 2018 that relates to the unspent amounts. I think we should commend the ministry for making the efforts to reduce the amounts outstanding and not paid into the consolidated fund. But there's still an amount that is still outstanding. Can the accounting officer give us any new information as it relates to the difference between the 112 and the 153 that was not returned to the consolidated fund?
You have the floor. Mike, please turn on the mic.
Thank you for noting our efforts to refund balances to the consolidated fund. The balances have all been returned. What was the unspent balances? What was our challenge was the timeline by which these some of the missions were able to send the monies back to the consolidated fund. And we've been attempting to address this, and as the committee would see, we have been, trying to complete the reconciliation of the unspent balances sent in by missions. For example, in 2021, we received, at the end of December, we received unspent balances from our missions in Cuba and Bovisa. And we are continuing to reconcile balances received from 9 other missions. And those refunds were made in January and February of this year. So we are mindful of the need to have this done in a timely manner, and we're continuing to try.
If I can have a follow-up, yes. What method is used? Is it wire transfer? And does the ministry has its independent account? Ministry of Foreign Affairs has its own account of which these monies are wired from the respective embassies to the ministry before, or attempts are made before the deadline of December the 31st.
Yes. Mr. Chair, may I ask Mr. Singh to explain?
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you.
Honorable Chairman, members of the Public Accounts Committee, PS, colleagues all, good morning. Please allow me to explain the process of remitting funds to the overseas missions. It is not the simplest or straightforward process. It commences where the missions will send their cash flow to head office. We will check those cash flows against our budgeted allocations, and we will make a recommendation to the Ministry of Finance. We will have to consolidate all 21 missions and consulates, high commissions that we have on board. When we send it to Finance, Finance will then release the funds in the software, and we will also send with that our vouchers. We enter the vouchers in the IFMIT software and we send it to the Ministry of Finance. They will also have examined those vouchers and they will issue checks based on those requests. Those checks are then remitted to the missions, and the missions will spend on a monthly basis based on those submissions. At the end, where we have unspent balances, the last set of remittance for the year will normally go up to the missions around the mid of the month. And the reason for that is because of the process I've just outlined. So when they send it back to us, we'll have to reconcile. We have to ensure that their remittance are matching our remittance, our database. Their expenditures are matching our database. We have all supporting documents before we send out a letter to say, this is your unspent for this year. So that is basically the process, and that is why we have unspent coming in January and February of the new year. I could recall joining the ministry, we had unspent coming in September of the other year. So we have made significant improvement in terms of the return of the unspent, and also the time, the amount and the time the unspent return to the consolidated fund. If you look at our report, you will see the reduction over the years. In 2018, we had 112.5 million. In 2019, we had 61.6 million. 2020, it went down to 39.1 million. And for 2021, in keeping with the Fiscal Management and Accountability Act, we were able to return 2.4 million in December of 2021. And we're working for the others to come in a timely manner. Thank you.
Mr. Singh, with the implemented system, if you are to give this system that you would have implemented a grade from 1 to 10, where would you put that scale? And additionally, as the ministry, I don't know if it can be done or if it has been done, the use of the diplomatic pouch for these funds to go and come, has that ever been an option?
In terms of the scale, I would say we are 8 right now, because we are not able to meet all the returns in December. But most of the refunds are coming in January and February of the new year. Going forward into 2022, 2023, we'll see more refunds coming in December of this year. In terms of
So the next time you make an appearance, it'll be 9.
Well, I don't want to give you that commitment, but we're working towards.
Okay.
The other question, sorry.
Diplomatic pouch.
Okay, the process of of sending monies to the mission. We received the check from the Ministry of Finance, and the checks are being sent through the Bank of Guyana to the mission. Most of the checks are being sent to the mission's account. Most of the checks are sent to the embassy in Washington, and Washington will channel it to the other missions.
But the question still remains, can the option of the diplomatic pouches be used as a means to get funds to the embassy or get it back before December the 3rd? Or is that a possibility?
I don't think it's allowed.
Mr. Chair, could I lend some clarity there?
Please do, AG.
Regarding the transmission of funds to the embassies, a letter is based on what Mr. Singh just explained. I just need to clarify further. The checks are sent back to the Ministry of Finance, and the Accountant General and the other signatories of the Consolidated Fund, we issue a notification letter to Bank of Guyana in order to transmit the funds to the various embassies. So in terms of the pouch using it, that's not likely. Our standard operating procedure for wire transfer is a notification letter sent to Bank of Guyana.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Chapman. Ms. Chapman is the Accountant General. For those who heard the voice. Yes.
Mr. Chair, I'd also like to commend PS and their team for the efforts they have made and the current mechanism that they have in place to be in compliance with Section 43 of the FMA Act, and also ensuring there's proper accountability and transparency as we continue to strengthen public financial management.
I would want to join AG in commending the Foreign Affairs Ministry. Being a member of the past PSC, I think this is a significant step in reducing the amount of monies that was backlogged. You know, this is indeed commendable. I would not give you an 8 though, I would give you a 7. Probably when you come around, we might give you a better grade.
It's a work in progress, Chair.
Yes. Give yourself a bigger, a big grade. Members, the floor is still open. Ms. Finance. To paragraph 254. Can we have an update on the amount of contracted employees that still exist at the ministry?
Chair, we still have 45 employees in terms of the question you pose.
Has there any recent steps to get those contracted employees on the fixed establishment? Because as of 2018 payroll, you had 57, about 15% of the staff who were contracted employees. So we still have a significant amount from 57 to 47. Oh, is that what I heard?
Yeah. We will have the figures that you require in terms of those persons who are on special contract as opposed to those who have been appointed on contract to public service positions.
Could you say how many of these contracted employees reside overseas? Is there any?
Yes.
Are they at respective missions?
We have 9, I'm advised we have 9 contracted employees abroad right now. We also have so the contracted employees at missions would more be the heads of missions. And we currently have Beijing, India, Washington. Yes.
And so 9 of them are respectively in different missions contracted.
PR, I forgot the permanent representative to the UN as well.
Are these
Cuba.
Are these?
Yes, all Guyanese.
Yeah, the question is, are they bona fide Guyanese or from Guyanese parentage?
No, Mr. Chair, they're all Guyanese, as in not
Not naturalized,
no, no, no.
born Guyanese.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Maipol. Is there any other questions, members? There being no other question, PS and team, let me thank you for making an appearance. The wait wasn't out of vain, I must say. You have basically covered most of the most You to introduce your team to the committee before we proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and distinguished members of the committee. To my immediate right is Dr. Jai Singh, Amanda Jai Singh from the Integrity Commission. My immediate left is Ms. Christine Mohan, who functions as the Chief Admin Officer within the Office of the President, Prime Minister. And to our left, Mr. Nias Suban, CEO of the National Communications Network. And to his left, Ms. Natalie Brandio, who is the Chief Operating Officer within the DPI. Behind me are Ms. Grimes, the accountant for the Integrity Commission, and Ms. Anisha Ramzan, Administrative Officer, Office of the Prime Minister, Ms. Jody Brown, Deputy Permanent Secretary, Acting Officer of the Prime Minister, and Mr. Bali, accountant for the NCN.
Thank you, PS. Members, we have 9 paragraphs, 4 of 2017 and 5 of 2018. I'll put all of those paragraphs for our consideration. And before we proceed, let me welcome those officers who are making their first appearance before the Public Accounts Committee. Members, the floor is open. Ms. Fernandez.
Just a quick question, Mr. Chair. Welcome. I'm just inquiring, under these years, was it Ms. Sabina Moore that served as the PS? Because I believe while considering the invitation to the Office of the Prime Minister, we actually spoke about making sure that we coordinated it efficiently so that Ms. Sabina Moore would have been here to answer these questions, because during those years, she would have been the one presiding over.
Okay, so the committee would have written the previous Permanent Secretary, Ms. Sabina Moore, to make an appearance. I don't know if Ms. PS comments was furnished with an excuse, but
Chair,
the committee wasn't furnished with an excuse. Proceed.
Chair, Ms. Sabina Moore is in the room. I think we're to come with the next team. But Ms. Christine Mohan, it was the chief operating person, administrative person. If you want, we can call her in.
I understand what he's saying, but the accounting officer responsible is a permanent secretary, and at the time that person was Ms. Sabina Moore.
Okay. So what we'll do, we'll just invite the former PS to be a part of this delegation, and then she can stay for Ministry of the President. Invite Ms. Sabina Moore so she can accompany the visiting team.
That I think this committee took that decision to invite former accounting officers who would have been responsible for the years. And under the proviso that in the event the current accounting officers are unable to answer questions related to those years, then they can call on the former accounting officers for support. But if current accounting officers are comfortable and they're able to answer and all of that, I think, right, I know, but I'm just making that observation that it might be a case where Mr. Cummings is quite comfortable answering all of that. So whilst we made that recommendation, I don't think it's cast in stone. But nevertheless, it is something that we recommend that should happen.
Okay, thanks for your clarification on what we would have decided upon. Ms. Sabina Moore has never shied away from making an appearance to the committee. So, and her presence here is testimony to that. So members, like I indicated earlier, we have 9 paragraphs before us. The floor is open for any questions you may have.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I
Go ahead, honorary member.
2017-16 and 2018-15, and by 2019-12. So there has been some movement in relation to paragraph 89 for 2017 and paragraph 92 for 2018 as it relates to the transferal of young persons under contract onto the fixed establishment. So whilst there have been movement, there is still 12 persons as of 2019. Can we get an update position as to what is the current position as it relates to these 12 persons below 45 who are still on contractual employment?
Yes. Yes.
You're going to 2020 there, sir?
No, Mr. Chairman, I said in 2017 there were 16 and in 2018 there were 15. And I know that by the end of 2019, you have 12. I call those numbers just to highlight that there have been some movement in terms of reducing the amount. So if the amount is 12 who are currently under contract and they're below 45 years, my question is that what steps are being taken or what are the obstacles preventing these 12 persons, if indeed they are 12, from coming onto the fixed establishment?
Well, the system operates now where contract employees have been increasing. That's been happening over the last year or so. I can't speak directly to the 12 or the number, but there is a movement of increases in the amount of contracted employees on staff.
Can you provide a reason for that?
I would assume it's the policy to do that.
We don't need assumptions here, sir.
Okay, but I can't.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I could
Yes.
add,
Go ahead.
from my own experience, staff members at the Office of the President and at the Office of the Prime Minister then, efforts were made by us to have staff members transition to the fixed establishment. However, some staff members were reluctant to go on the fixed establishment, and you had some challenges there as well as persons weren't qualified. Some of them were not qualified, and we were told that they had to be qualified. So we spent some time asking staff to upgrade their qualifications. In addition to that, the PSC was not constituted for half of 2017 and the entire 2018. So you hadn't much movement in terms of moving people from the fixed establishment, from the on contract to the fixed establishment. Right now, PSM has decided, a decision was made that staff has the option of either remaining on contract or you can go on fixed establishment. So that's what exists at the moment. But yes, we are making efforts to transition persons once they are willing to do so.
So the problem lies primarily with the unqualified.
There are some instances, yes, with persons who are not up to speed.
So the staff that are qualified that are on contract, is there a willingness for them to go on the fixed establishment?
Not all of them. You have some amount of reluctance. And some persons prefer to remain on contract because they prefer to enjoy their gratuities every 6 months than wait until they're 55 to enjoy that. So that's what we normally have, especially the younger persons, they prefer to remain on contract.
So those on contracts, are there the same, anyone on the fixed establishment doing the same work as the contracted workers? I ask because I want to know if the benefits are different excluding the gratuity. Is there the same salary range?
More than likely, yes. We don't have, usually if somebody is on contract and we have that person on the fixed establishment, they're similar salaries.
So the only
thing that differs is the gratuity that you would normally have. Because it's the same position actually, unless On contract, you don't have that designation that exists. But in the public service, you have traditional public service positions. When you have those, the salaries match the ones on contract. But sometimes you will have some positions that are not on the public service inventory. Those positions might be a little higher, but based on your qualification, if you come with a master's or whatever. But usually they're just on par.
So PS has comments has indicated as there seems to have been an increase in contracted workers. Are these persons who are coming into the ministry? Are they coming because of a particular skill set that they have?
Probably yes. With the office of the Prime Minister, it's probably different there. I'm talking if I can talk about the office.
At what skill level they're coming in at?
I don't know specifically what staff he's talking about. But what he's probably saying that there were some kind of employment at the office of the Prime Minister, and those positions probably came in at different levels.
Okay, yes. What's the skill set that is coming in?
The Prime Minister has over the maybe 2 years taken on additional responsibility in terms of energy, expanded ICT arrangement, liberalization of the telecom sector, and many of those to implement those programs requires skill set to advise and guide and support the work of the Office of the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister. So there have been persons coming in those areas.
So all of those individuals that have gained employment on the contract, they are tertiary qualified individuals.
Most of them, there would have been people at a lower level, but there's no public service commission, as PS Moore explained. So we have to resort to the contract system.
What was the length of those contracts? Does it vary or
usually
for the lower
it's
tier?
one year, and if you access duty free, then you have 3 years. If the position is one that attracts a traveling, if it's a traveling position, yes, it's 3 years. But more than likely, it's 1 year.
That is waiting for the commission to be activated. And likely those individuals will go on the fix.
As if they prefer to go on the fix now, because they have an option. If they want to go on the fix, they could. If they want to remain on contract, they have that option too.
So from what tier they're entitled to gratuity?
What year?
Tier level or level?
Every person who is on contract, they automatically entitled to.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a follow up on the comments made by Ms. Bina Moore. She was making the statement, or enlightening us rather, that persons are given a decision was made for persons to be given the option as to whether or not they want to go on the fixed establishment or the use of a contract. So that option is there. So I noted the PS just said, Mr. Cummins just said that because of the absence of the public service that they're just doing contracts, but Mr. Bina is saying that there's an option. Well, my question is there a circular that was sent out to that effect that persons are acting in response? So when it comes to the method of employment that is being employed right now?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, there is a circular that was issued by Public Service Ministry. Well, now Ministry of Public Service.
What date was that, Mayor?
Well, we'd ask the PS to provide the PSU a copy of it, sir. Yeah.
I think we have a copy, but my colleague outside, she would have
okay,
it.
well, you make your appearance, you just get the staff to make a copy and send it to all the members. Member Maipal.
Sir, let me see if I can understand where we are pertaining to what we're looking at based on the exchanges just now. So in 2017, there was a quota of contracted employees that were put on the pensionable establishment in keeping with a circular that was issued, which was policy at the time. And in 2018, that process continued.
Correct.
Left us with 12 contracted employees that were yet to be put on the pensionable establishment as of the 31st of December 2018. I would like to know what was the reason specific to the 12, since there were others who went on the pensionable establishment. I do hear Ms. Moore in terms of saying that qualification was one factor and other reasons may have contributed to the 12, but I would like for us to be specific in terms of what caused the 12 not to be on the pensionable establishment. And I would like to know what is the current status of the 12 employees. Are they still employed with the Office of the Prime Minister? And if they are still employed with the Office of the Prime Minister, do they enjoy that option to be placed on the pensionable establishment, or do they have to remain on contract? Because I know the current policy position of this administration is a choice. One has that choice. So I would like those questions to be answered, sir.
Mr. Chair, in 2017, 2018, those staff members were under the Office of the Prime Minister. Like I said, efforts were made for them to be transitioned. And by that, the form that is issued by PSC, we have those forms at the office, because at that time, Office of the Prime Minister I was the permanent secretary for the Office of the Prime Minister, because it was right in the compound of OP. So the same thing that was done for the Office of the President staff was the same thing that was done for them. And the forms were filled out. They were asked to come in, we filled out those forms, and those forms were transmitted to PSC at that time. So regardless of if people wanted not to go, we made sure that we followed that policy decision and we filled those forms and they were sent to PSC. Like I said, half of 2017, the entire 2018, we had no commission. So none of them were ever transitioned. The position is that they remain on contract as we speak. They're still in the employ of the Office of the Prime Minister, and they still have the option, based on the recent decision that was made, they still have the option of either remaining on contract, or if they prefer to be transitioned, that can still happen. And they know they have that choice at the moment.
Thank you, Chairman. Just so I want PS to remind me, when is it that we did not have a Public Service Commission?
I inquired from the PSC just to confirm, and I was told half of 2017, entire 2018.
So can I ask what is the current status there? I understand clearly what the PS is saying with reference to the 12. My concern is primarily with these 12. What is the current status of the 12 employees?
In terms if they're still employed?
Yes.
Yeah, they are still employed, but they are now with the Office of the Prime Minister. They have transitioned in terms of location. They're now at the Office of the Prime Minister, where they are now. So they're still in the employ, and they are currently on contract. But like I said, they have the option, if they want to be transitioned, they can still do it once they are below 45.
Not to doubt your answer, PS at Office of the President now, but because I'm asking a current question, I would gladly appreciate if PS of the Office of the Prime Minister can reassure me of the answer that you have provided.
No problem.
Go ahead, PS.
I know the PS Office of the President to be an honorable person, So I
I know that too, Comrade Chairman, I know that too. But for the record, because it's a current question with reference to the status of the current 12 employees, and you being the accounting officer of the current 12 employees, I will prefer the answer come from the current permanent secretary of the office of the Prime Minister so that we can have that answer documented in the answer.
Yes, the answer is yes.
Thank you. And can you assure us if they have that option of choosing whether they would like to remain as a contracted employee and or if they choose to be on the pensionable establishment?
Yes.
Would you be kind enough, sir, to provide this Public Accounts Committee with the designation of the 12 employees under question?
Yes.
Thank you, Comrade Chairman.
Would a week suffice in you providing the information?
Yes.
Thank you. Go ahead. Mr. Nunes.
Thank you, sir. Just a follow-up on that, said on the question and the response, actually, I just want to be clear. Yes, we're speaking about the question that my colleague, Mr. Maipaw, posed was on this specific 12 that we were talking about here at the ending of 2018. And you were saying, based on my understanding, that you were speaking about the same 12 persons. But my question now is, currently these 12 persons are still there. There was no shifting around on anyone, because to say that we are still speaking about the very 12 people, I find that a little strange, if I can use those words. So to give those designations today in 2022 and saying that those 12 persons are indeed the same people, I find it a little strange. So I just want to know if we're talking about the same people. We're talking about 12 specific people. That's the question Mr. Maipaw asked. And I want to know if those 12 people are still working in the same capacity there today, because that's the impression I'm being given. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, yes. I wish to adjust my response. I'll ask Ms. Mohan to clarify.
Yes, Ms. Mohan.
Good morning. Some of those persons, as of 2018, they're no longer in the employ. Currently, they're not under the employ of OPM as of right now. Some would have resigned. Some would have been transferred to different agencies. Yeah.
Thank you. So we're talking about 12. That's not a big number.
Well, I have a list of 15.
You have a list of 15? All right, I believe, Chair, that this needs
Go ahead.
further clarification. So can you clarify what is the difference here when we have the Auditor General providing us with a document?
Yeah, this document I have here has 15 names, so I'm not sure your document has 12.
Well, you said 12 just now. Is your number using?
No, for 28, Mr. Chairman, it's very clear. For 2017 was 16, for 2018 was 15.
So where you at with 12 just now? Good. So the 15 that we have, and 15 is still not a big number.
I just want, if I can just lend some clarity on a number. It's the action taken by the ministry says that as at the 31st of December 2019, there were 12 employees who were below the age of 45 and not transferred to the pensionable establishment.
Mr. Siraj, which document you reading, sir?
Your number, Siraj.
Mr. Chairman, when I presented the question, I told the accounting officer that I noticed a reduction, that in 2017 was 16, in 2018 was 15, and by the end of 2019 was 12. So then I said that it is a move in the right direction. So my question is that if the 12 is still on contract, or they have transitioned to the fixed establishment. And I assume these are people below 45. I can understand above 45 being on contract.
So we're on the same page. The number we're looking at here is 12, but they decided that the ministry is saying they have at 15.
But we were examining 2017 and 2018. So at the end of 2018 was 50.
Yes, but what I'm saying is that the question is aborted from the report. So nothing is wrong for us to go down the road of seeing where it leads because it's aborted from the report and we're expected to correct what is in the report so that it doesn't become repetitive. So from 16 to 15 to 12, so the number we're looking at, and I need guidance, Chair, from the Office of the Prime Minister, if the number is 15 currently, or if it is 12 as of 2019, and what is the difference there between the two numbers? Oh, well, of course, but the concern, I just want clarification here. I understand that there are more contracted employees now.
Right.
That's understood. Our contention has to do specific to the persons in 2017, 18, and 19. Those are the persons one would have expected to have transitioned onto the pensionable establishment. So our contention has to do with them. And perhaps I should go it one at a time. As of 2019, it was 12, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So
Please just be certain because we don't need the assumption.
My apologies, asking to get it clarified and then submit.
Okay, well, there are a series of questions I want to ask to follow up. So let me ask some of them now, and the clarification, sir, with your permission, can come leading up. Now, these people, with the answer that was provided in terms of qualification being a reason that may have hampered them from getting on to the Public Service Commission, I would like to know their date of employment. And the possibility do exist that they may have had another contract after one would have expired. So if we can go deeper into the system to find their year of employment so that we can clarify when they were employed. And remember, we're talking about the 12, right? I would like to also know if the same 12 are still employed in the office of the Prime Minister. I would like to know their remuneration package. And if they are no longer in the office of the Prime Minister, which location are they presently? Those that have resigned, if you can put the designation of those that would have resigned, and where are the current number? And I'm absolutely certain that there are going to be more questions to follow up on it. So, Comrade Chairman, I would gladly appreciate if this paragraph can remain open until final clarification comes.
So you're saying we got to bring back this agency?
Well, not necessarily, based on how I understand it. When they submit their answer, then is when we will see if there is need for further clarity.
Yes, and a week would suffice. So Monday, Mr. Maipo, you'll have an opportunity to peruse the information, and if needs be, you write the ministry with your follow-up questions.
But Chair, if you're giving them a week and they submit the answer on Monday, I will have to examine it on Monday.
Yes, it's 2 questions. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, just a note,
Yes.
I don't think we can ask the accounting officer to provide information as to where the people are if they are not at the office of the Prime Minister.
But the office of the Prime Minister is saying to us that they were transferred. So obviously they had to facilitate the transfer.
No, if they were transferred, that's a different matter. But if they're
But that's
out
what
of
I'm
the
referencing.
system, we cannot
No,
ask the
but if
accounting
they're out of the
officer.
system, then they have accounted
No,
for
it's
those.
not
They have accounted for those who are out of the system by way of mentioning that they resigned.
Right, so they did.
But I differentiated it,
Yeah,
comrade.
but you cannot ask the accounting officers and now tell you where they are.
No, comrade, you seem to not understand what I'm saying.
You said that
The
you asked
question
the
I
accounting
asked, I
officer where they are.
differentiated.
comrades,
I differentiated it. Comrade Chairman, just for clarity, I specified that from the 12, if there is a number that resigned, then that will be mentioned, perhaps 6. And my follow-up to that was, where are the remaining 6? You want to tell me clearly that I'll fire them? The question, sir, I believe is proper. And if the office of the Prime Minister believe that the question is outside of their jurisdiction, then I think the PS is competent enough with his staff to say that the question cannot be answered by him because he cannot answer it or account for it. I don't think it's proper for my comrade on the other side to decide whether the PS can answer the question or not.
No, okay. I think the question, members, I think the question is a legitimate question. How many staff still reside at the ministry? What is their designation? And if any has been transferred, let us know where they were transferred to. If any would have resigned, the committee is apprised with those who would have resigned. That's not a difficult request. So PS, would 1 week suffice? Thank you. Ms. Finance, you had a question? Ms. Finance, you had a question? Proceed, yes.
If I may just move forward a bit, sir, from that. I'm looking at our briefing notes, the appendix 1 of the briefing note. I'm seeing like the Government Information Agency, GINA/DPI. I'm seeing last year of audit, last leaded National Assembly. So could we start at DPI? We see 2014 to 2017 opinion to be finalized, 2018 to 2021 financial statements to be submitted. Could we have an update on what is going on there?
That's Ms. Babdio to respond.
Go ahead.
Morning. 2014 to 2017 is with the audit office. 2018 has been submitted today to the audit office, a draft copy. The rest would be going before the week is up. So 19, 20, and 21 will be going before the week is up. Draft copies, that's it.
The National Communications Network, Inc., what is the position with that? NCN.
Yeah, for 2017, this was sent to the parent company on 31st of March 2019 to be laid in Parliament. 2018, on the 30th of December 2021 to be laid in Parliament also. 2019, same date, 30th of December 2021 to be laid in Parliament.
It was already, I didn't get the first part. You said it was
completed and signed, yeah. AGM was held and so on.
And that is up to the year what?
2019.
2019?
Yeah, we are currently finalizing 2020 with the queries. We completed the field work for 2020.
And 2021?
We're in preparation of the financial statements currently.
Okay, so in 2021, you're in preparation of those?
We're preparing 2021 now.
Okay, so if I could ask, Mr. Chair, because we are in 2022, has there been any policy change in 2021?
No, let us stick to the years we are.
Okay, moving forward, Integrity Commission, could I have an update on that?
Thank you. The Integrity Commission financial statement up to 2017 has been audited. We have the audited financial statement. 2018 is with Office of the President, P.S. Moore, to sign, and that will be submitted to the audit office to be audited. Thank you.
You said it's at P.S. Moore to be signed?
Yes.
And how long has it been submitted?
It's only submitted last Friday.
Last Friday, okay, thank you.
Mr. Maipo.
Thank you, Comrade Chairman. See, I'm multitasking. Sir, National Communications Network. This report, the year of last audit and so on, just for my own clarity, does this capture the NCN branch, I think, that they have in Linden there also? And this is everything is captured at that level?
Yes, sir.
And the radio station there in Linden, that falls on the NCN also?
Television.
No, sir. Just
the television station, sorry.
Yeah, the television station.
So, sir, can I have an understanding? I'm not too clear as to the difference in terms of these branches, because I think Region 2 has, I think there it's called Channel 25, if I'm right. And I think in Georgetown here, we pick up it as Channel 11. So it's different, what do I call it, substations or different sections or entities that falls within the one head, like you have NCN, National Communications Network, and then you have a branch in Region 2, a branch in Region 10, a branch somewhere else that controls their own spending, or everything is controlled from the center?
If I may, through the chair.
Go ahead, sir.
For clarity, we use the term branches to identify Babis and Linden. The others are deemed as community stations, radio stations.
Okay, so, but there has to be a difference as to why you use Babis and Linden as branches and the others as community stations, you said?
Because those are two television stations that have operable studio capacity. That's the difference between those two and all the others. So we don't have any other television studio stations or stations with that capacity per se.
Okay, so they can basically function semi-independent.
Well, in the context that they are allowed to be able to seek revenue garnering endeavors, but those revenues have to be accounted for and then come back up to head office.
So it is accounted for. The Auditor General also goes there to facilitate audits at those two branches, right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Well, what is the current status, if I may ask, of these two specific branches?
In the context of?
In the context of their audit and their current status as an entity under your watch.
Well, as a company overall, we are, as the accountant would have given a response in terms of where we are in terms of our financial obligations through the Auditor General's office. So currently we are now trying to work. We are working on 2021. And this is for the entire company.
For the entire company. But is there anything specific to these two branches that you believe we should know?
I mean, I want to
Okay. Thank you.
I have a follow-up. What is the relationship with NCN Linden Branch and the Linden Broadcasting Network? Because you would have indicated, CEO, that it is considered a branch because of its capacity and to have its own studio and broadcast its own news and garner its own revenue. But the Linden Broadcasting Network that is housed in NCN Linden Branch, all of the equipment and the apparatus being utilized, the majority of it being utilized by NCN is owned by LBN. And as far as I'm aware, no rent for those facilities, the studio, the cameras, every aspect to make the news possible in Linden is as a result of the equipment of LBN, but no rent has been put to the use of the LBN equipment, but revenues are being garnered. So how is this really and truly being accounted for when NCN Linden Branch don't own the equipment that they're using, but they are collecting funds as a result of the use of those equipment owned by LBN?
When I assumed the position in August last year, I know there were some concerns and there were some matters being addressed.
And I hear you, sir.
Sorry. When I assumed the position last year, August, I learned that there were some similar concerns that you had raised that were being addressed at that particular time. Those matters are still being addressed. And as it is, both entities are operating. I'm not aware of any rental being paid. But what we do know is that the two entities are functioning, as you would know, from the same entities. There were some challenges with equipment, and we had to be able to see where we could have been able to rely on the other equipment to ensure that there was continuity of broadcast. But in terms of the specific arrangements prior to my assuming the acting CEO, can I ask Mr. Bali to shed some light on that?
You're the acting CEO from 2020, 2021?
2021 August.
Okay.
Like the CEO said, the situation is the same. We have the entities they are operating.
When you say the situation is the same,
like the explanation that he gives to you.
Well, the explanation isn't totally accurate because the two bodies aren't really working together.
But they're in the same.
They're in the same facility. There's no staff at LBN. All that exists is the physical apparatus that gives life to the operations of NCN, of which they are making, and I wish that the Auditor General would take note of this, because they are utilizing equipment and garnering revenue for those equipment that don't belong to NCN. And those audited finances garnered from the Linden branch that goes into the coffers of NCN rightfully don't belong to NCN. It belongs to LBN because they would not have been in a capacity to garner any revenue if they weren't utilizing the equipment owned by LBN. So if this is where we are, then the conversation should go to a different level since then. And I'm happy that the CEO has been apprised by this situation that has been unfolding. But we still need to know how LBN, the rightful owners and custodian of those equipment that NCN is using, how are they going to be beneficiaries? Because NCN is benefiting presently for a number of years. How is LBN going to get some of the proceeds? And I wish the Auditor General can lend some guidance here. Because all of the records of those finances gained since the equipment owned by LBN has been operationalized. No proceed has gone to LBN. All would have gone to NCN. And I believe that is a very unfair position that has to be corrected. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I would like a response, either from the CEO or the gentleman at the back.
No, my God.
Mr. Chair, I hear you, and I will endeavor to be able to work on some kind of report to get it to you, because I know there were some other issues that I'm not very familiar with that prior to even 2020.
Yes.
And with your permission, I will endeavor to ensure that I have a report that I can be able to send to you.
Yes, Mr. Suban, if it is possible, would a week suffice for you to compile a report of where we are, given the fact that the Auditor General would have provided year-by-year reporting on the funds garnered from NC and Linden branch to add to your coffers. So there is information that you can have access to put together a report. Okay. Mr. Siraj?
Mr. Chairman, just to follow up on the point that you're making, I think you call it's LBN. It's LBN.
Linden Broadcasting Network.
Right. So there seemed to be some kind of arrangement of formal or informal between LBN and NCN. My take on it is that you said that you need to take this conversation probably needs to go to another level. And I agree with that, because the team here on the accounting officer might not be at the level where the conversation is going between the relationship between LBN and NCN. So I think that we can go into that direction as to, take a conversation to that other level that we are alluding to.
Yes, well, the CEO is committed to do that. Ms. Finance?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to follow up on something that was said from Mrs. Suban. You referred, Ms. Michael, I'm on the floor. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, could you allow the member to have the floor?
Ms. Finance, you have my protection.
Thank you, sir. So as I was saying, Mrs. Suban, you made some comments as to the other radio stations being actually deemed community radio. But to the best of my knowledge, I know that GNB have a list of guidelines when it as it relates to community radio and the way in which community radios are operated all together. And most importantly to note that community radios are not owned and operated by the government and by the community. So that's how do the radio stations, for example, in Mabaruma, in Bartica, and so operated? It's by government, correct?
There are two options. So those stations rely predominantly on the feed
from NCN,
from VOG, the Voice of Guyana.
Voice of Guyana, yes.
Only the Voice of Guyana.
So
however, most, if not all of them, have the capacity to be able to do local programming, which they do, especially. So we have more local time. You will find like in Paiwamak, in Anai, in Bartica, those two predominantly. The others, because of capacity in terms of human capacity, they do have a presence, but it's not as prolific as you would have seen or heard on Bartica and Anai. So there is that provision for community-related programming on all of them.
No, but my contention is, sir, that if I may, the whole aspect of community radio is to have those radio stations being owned and operated by the community and not by government in terms of even staffing and things as such. So when you said community radio, and the terminology I'm referring to that was used there, because community radios, as we know, any grouping could go in to GNB and apply for a community radio license. Actually, a youth group, whatever grouping could go in and apply for a community radio license. So the terminology there was what I had an issue with, because I know these radio stations comes under the mandate and basically being controlled by NCN, by government. So I am not sure how we fit those in with community radio, because community radio, I believe one of the requirements is for them to actually have a board of their own that dictates the staffing and content and things like that at that community level. So I don't know how we can differentiate between the community radio definition as being set out by the guidelines and laws at GNBA and opposed to the terminology being utilized by NCN as it pertains to community radio, because I see them being very different in the way in which they operate.
Given what we would have met, let's take for example, some of what you mentioned there would be in place, like for Pyromat. So, for example, there were MOUs signed between the government and these entities, the regional entities. So there is an obligation also from the regional entities to be able to provide support, infrastructure support, maintenance of buildings, and so on. That is happening, but not necessarily to the extent that we would expect, because we do have challenges. We have had cases where we went off air for a protracted period, and monies had to be spent to get them back up, and those monies had to come from NCN to ensure that those stations were back up. Right now in Mabaroma, we have some challenges with the building, and the regional administration is working feverishly to be able to find a location that we can be able to transition to. So there is in cases where we do get support, but is there a need for more holistic? I would say yes. If there is, I'm saying there is some level of support. So what I'm saying is there a need for it to be more holistic? My answer is yes.
Mr. Chair, just a question. Well, currently as it is there any plan in place for the regional radio stations to be given more independence, a community radio, so that they would actually function as the intent of community radios in terms of having a board at the community level to monitor and dictate what goes on with the radio station and their staffing capacity and so forth? And I understand the support that comes from government, but I'm speaking specifically to the management of the radio stations, especially things like who decides on who the announcers are and things like that. Do we have, is there any plan in place to see that those community radios function as community radios?
I may want to respectfully suggest through the chair that could be a decision that is above me in terms of policy.
But sir, I respectfully want to disagree with you. There's an act that gives guidance to these community radios, which specifically outlines that a board comprising of members of the community mans these community radios. So it is not above your pay grade. It is you just following the law. And if a board don't exist, we make all the necessary efforts so that a board be put in place based on what the law prescribes for these community radios to be functional. I think that is a corrective approach to make it right, to make it legal. And if it doesn't exist in wherever community radios exist, let us do the honorable thing and get it fixed.
Noted.
Mr. Siraj.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2017, it's paragraph 91, 91, and in 2018, it's 94. Two questions, Mr. Chairman. One is whether under the GNA/DPI or NCN, the Commission of Information, under which one of these places was that office provided for? And my second question relates to 2018, same paragraph 94. I note here in the breakdown, salaries and deduction for 2 officers. Can the accounting officer provide us with the position of those 2 officers? I just need the position. Thank you.
Yes.
Chair, is the member referring to item 7?
Mr. Siraj, the PS is asking a question.
Are you referring to item 7?
Are you referring to item
Reduction
7?
for 2 officers?
Item
$12 million?
It's in the breakdown here. It's first, second, third. It's the 4th item in the breakdown in paragraph 94. It says the salaries and deduction for 2 officers, and I'm referring to the 2018 audit, paragraph 94. If it can be provided with the position of these 2 persons. If you don't have the information, Mr. Chairman, you can lay it over. And my first question was related to probably both years, but it's captured under subsidies and contribution to local organization. I'm trying to establish under which head we would have paid the Commissioner of Information. And like I said, Mr. Chairman, I don't have no difficulty if it's the information in relation to the position of the 2 officers. If it's not available now, I have no difficulty in doing something.
Okay.
We'd like permission to lay this over. Chair, we'd like permission to lay over the response.
Thank you.
Just to inform the committee, the finance secretary has asked to be excused from the meeting. He was summoned to an emergency meeting. All right. If FS, you had to leave the meeting. PS, you don't have the information now.
Asking permission to lay over the information, sir.
Within a week, right, sir? Any additional questions, members?
Not from me, Mr. Chair.
Sir, that's 94. The question from 94 in totality, though, that information will be laid over. That's what we're saying. For the entire 94. Okay, all right.
Chair, this same 94, I hear the information will be laid over pertaining to the salaries and deduction for the 2 officers. That's what Comrade Siraj was endeavoring to engage in.
I just wanted to know the position of the 2 officers. What position were paid these amounts? The position of the 2 officers.
Mm-hmm. But I'm sure that you could go back into the answer for the questioning of the estimates when it was available at that time, and the answer can be sought there.
No. If you want the answer to be provided at the PSC, you can make that request.
Thank you, sir. Sir, this Government Information Agency, Gina DPI, that's what I used to answer, you know. This 250,574,000, and to National Communications Network 145,375,000. These monies catered for operational expenses and capital expenses, or I should say current and capital. And can I ask, first of all, if that is a sum for both capital and current, or just current and capital was captured somewhere else?
The 250 DPI was just current.
Was just
current.
Current.
Current also.
Current also. So this spoke primarily to salaries and travelings and other overhead expenses and so on. The Government Information Agency and the National Communications Network at the time, they employed staff primarily on contract basis, or were they also permanent staff through the Public Service Commission for these two entities?
DPI Gina was just strictly contracted.
Strictly contracted.
NCN is permanent. Some contracted, but most permanent.
With reference to these contracted employees, they were contracted in keeping with the law to receive 22.5% as gratuity every 6 months from DPI and NCN?
DPI, yes.
NCN based on the scale, based on the salary scale, not 22, some will be 10, some will be 15, it depends on the scale.
For gratuity?
Yeah.
Oh, really? That's fully accurate, AG. I thought gratuity is calculated at 22.5 of the salary times 6 months. My understanding is that the law speaks to it being 22.5 times the salary times 6 to get to the 6 month.
Yeah, but those are for the public servants. I think these entities has their own rules.
So contracted employees can get it at a different percentage?
So they could get 50%? I don't understand.
No, but it raised another question.
AG, is your
Accountant General.
Yes, you want to learn some guidance?
He can answer, Mr. Barry can answer.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, that's based on our own internal policy of NCN. That's based on the internal policy of NCN. Grade 8 and 9, they get 10%, and above 10, grade 10 get 15.
Go that again for me, please.
8 and 9. 8 and 9, they get 10%. And from 10 to about 10 and 11, they get 15.
That's probably
so the higher the grade, the higher?
No, this is permanent. They give them, yeah, for permanent person.
Permanent person on the public service
gets gratuity?
No, for the board. NCN controls by the board.
Oh,
so
yes.
It's an internal arrangement.
Yes, it's an internal arrangement. But I need guidance from our advisors. There is a law of this country that speaks to gratuity for contracted employees. And there is no subsidiary legislation, or there is no board decision that can conflict with the law of the land. So I would like to have some specific guidance in terms of the law of the land versus the information that was just provided, where grade 9, 8, and 9 gets 10% as their gratuity, and grade 10 to 11 gets 15% as their gratuity. So I don't know if the financial secretary, the AG,
The Accountant General.
Accountant General.
Go ahead, Mr.
Chair, regarding the contract gratuity, the public service rule speaks about contract gratuity per se for public officers, not officers who fall under the remit of boards. So the 22.5% is just for public officers, not for those who are run by boards.
So AG.
Yes, member.
Yes, AG. So am I to understand that the board has sole authority to determine what percentage of gratuity they provide to their staff, even if they determine 100% or 50 or 2% or 1%?
One would assume on that premise they can't go above 22.5% based on the public service rules.
But AG, forgive my ignorance on the matter, but I believe with your sensible guidance, I can be put in the right direction. The public service rule number 22.5 is not subject to institutions run by boards, correct?
That's correct.
But our assumption is that in the deliberation of the board making their pronouncement, they are not expected to go beyond the 22.5.
Well, they should not go above the 22.5 because the maximum for public service for that the rules dictate is up to 22.5. So they can't come and go for 50% as you're indicating.
Okay, so the public service rule says up to 22.5, or it must be 22.5.
I need to check. Could you give me some time while I check the rules?
Much appreciated, because if we are going to accept that boards can determine their own figure, but not expected to go above 22.5 as for the public service rule, then I think it is necessary to also accept that boards should go with the 22.5 if they can pass it. Because on what basis are they not passing it? Because the public service rule says so?
And then we have to make a determination which board. Is it for semi-autonomous board? I mean, there's so many boards, there's school boards that hire and fire people. We have to have great clarity with regards to how these boards operate.
But
yes, Mr. Chair, we will need to seek further clarity on that.
Yes, Comrade Chair, I'm happy that AG will endeavor to provide us.
So I will lay over that and provide you with that information.
Good, thank you. Now, continuing, of course, that is not the line I was going for, but I'm happy that we can bring some sort of regularization in terms of understanding how our employees at these distinguished organizations can get their maximum benefits if necessary. In connection with the same salaries of staff and so on, these contracted employees at both GINA and NCN in 2017 and 18, when are they entitled, or are they, I should say, are they or were they entitled to leave passage?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And
at the end of the year, end of the employment year, the tenure, they're entitled to do leave passage.
At the end of the entire contract?
No, 1 year. At the end of 1 year, they're entitled to do leave passage.
What about DPI?
They're all on a year contract. So when the contract is up, they're entitled to the vacation.
Oh, so they're on yearly contract. Yeah. DPI is yearly contract. Yeah. NCN is yearly contract too?
No, these are permanent. At the end of your year, you get a 1 month vacation allowance.
Yeah, but that's a permanent. But you also said that you have contracted employees.
Yes, some.
Yes. So some of your contracted employees Some of your employees are contracted. My question is focused on the contracted employees. So I will appreciate through you, Chair, if we can ensure the answer is specific to the contracted employees. So if a person is contracted for 3 years and they start in January of 2017, their contract will end in 2020. So they have to complete that entire 2017 from January to December, and their leave passage is paid to them
at the end of the
At the end of December, the fourth year. At the end of the fourth year.
So at the end of 2017 December, they'll get their leave passage in 2018 January.
Yes.
Right? And that's the same rule that applies for DPI. And the gratuity, and then when they finish that in 2018, then they will serve in 2018. They'll get their second one in January of 2019, serve in 2019, and get their third one in their handing. Now, is that the same way it is happening currently?
Yes.
I have a follow-up on that, if I may, Mr. Chair. Well, I understand that structure in which you're saying that at the end of the first year, both contracted and permanent employees, at the end of that first year, they get the leave passage. But what is the policy on how that leave passage is paid? Is it paid before the persons proceed on that leave, or is it paid after persons return from the leave?
It varies, Mr. Chair. The leave passage is an entitlement. So after each year, you are entitled to it. So sometimes it's based on when it's processed, because sometimes you don't catch the payroll in that particular period, and so it goes over to the next month. But it is paid at the end of every year. You're entitled to it. And if you're on a fixed establishment, it's paid every April.
I understand, but my question basically at the policy level, how do you pay the employees? Because persons going on leave, they will, for example, if my date that I am due leave starts today on Monday, do you pay those persons their leave? Is it not a policy that you pay those persons their leave before they proceed on the leaves, or do you have persons wait until they come back without any of the leave passage money for that entire period that they're on leave? You wait until they come back to give them the leave. It's not a policy position, because I don't want to believe that it's ad hoc, in which some people get paid before they go out and then some people get paid after they come back. That can't be the system. So
most times people are paid. It depends, because if we're talking about contract persons, you're supposed to be paid.
No, I'm actually asking for both. For my question is specific. It's both.
If you're on the fixed establishment, you get your leave passage in April. It doesn't mean that you go off on leave in April, because you can go on your leave anytime before, because in the public service, you earn your leave the year before. So you can go on your leave as you choose within that year. If you are on contract now, just prior to the expiration of your contract, you are entitled to your leave. So you will proceed on your leave, and then your leave passage will be processed soon after.
So it's not processed in preparation, knowing that this person is going on leave?
Well, not necessarily in every case.
Why not?
Mr. Chair, could I lend some clarity there?
Please, yes. Thank you.
The leave passage cannot be paid before the person proceeds on leave, because the contract stipulated a relief passage is paid at the end of the 1-year tenure. So the end of the scenario that you give early on, where the person tenure ends in December, they cannot be paid December or prior, but they are proceeding on leave before their contract expires in December. So the leave passage will be paid after.
So thank you so much for that, AG. So now my question is, with regard to the responses that we've been getting prior to that clarification, how are some persons getting before? Because I was just told that some persons get it before and some persons get it after.
they should not get it. I don't know what other arrangement they have, but they should not get it. The policy is you get it after your end of your tenure and your 1 year tenure, then you will get it in the next pay cycle or the other one following.
Yes, can you give some clarity?
I don't know if I was clear. What I meant to say, with the fixed establishment, you get your leave batches fixed in April. If you're on contract, you go off and leave on or before your contract. Most times people would go off just like a week or like a month, depending on how much leave you have. That leave passage is now processed during that period. So sometimes it depends on the pay changes sometimes that your leave batches might not really catch the end of that. It sometimes roll over in most cases, but it's usually at the end of your contract cycle. Yeah.
Yes. Members, do we have any additional questions for the agency? Okay, there being no other question, PS, you would have made some commitments to provide information within a week time. The CEO also has committed to provide those information within a week's time. We trust that you will honor that obligation. PS, I want to thank you. Yes, on the information that you would be providing, we would rather you provide it via email as well as make copies for each of the members, physical copies, to assist the staff at the PSC. That would be of significant assistance. 25 copies, 25 physical copies, and you send it to the clerk, and the clerk will disseminate it via the virtual platform to all of the members of the Public Accounts Committee. So PS, I want to thank you and your team for coming and making an appearance before the Public Accounts Committee and providing us with the responses that you would have. Do have a good day. PS Moore, we will break and then we'll take Ministry of the Presidency. So members,